Hey everybody, I'm Meredith Holly. I'm a lawyer and a life coach, and I am a best-selling author. I help women stop sexual harassment without quitting their jobs, and one of the ways I do that is by working with companies on creating a healthy workplace culture. So today I want to talk about the topic of a toxic work environment. So if you feel like this, then you are probably in a toxic work environment. And I want to see, ooh, I can create a poll. Okay, so I have a poll and I want you to take the poll and I think it's anonymous, but tell me how you feel at work. If it's not anonymous, then you might want to say you feel happy even if you don't, but I don't think you should do that. I think you should be honest. Ooh, look, there we go. Is it over my face? I don't even know how this poll deal works, but I'm going to see in this live. So, okay. I want you, while you are sitting here listening, hey Yanni, hey Janet, I want you to think about somebody who you care about, who, thank you, that's nice. So I want you to sit and I want you to close your eyes and think about somebody you care about who complains about work all the time. I think most of us have somebody like this in our lives. And I think that some of us get annoyed with the people. And then a lot of times, though, it's somebody that we love. And I don't want you to share who it is. Like, don't embarrass them or anything. But just think about this person and send love to them. And usually it's somebody that we know is amazing, who we totally love, who we think is creating amazing things in the world, who has so many talents, and we think that they're so great. And we just feel like there's an environment that this person's in that is holding them back. So think about somebody that you love who fits that description, who's amazing, but she's just in this place that doesn't appreciate her, and it doesn't let her move forward and create the amazing things she's capable of in the world. So this is for her, whether she agrees with you or not. And I just want you to consider sharing this video with her privately, not publicly or anything like that. If you feel like it offers something good that is helpful for her to think about while she's in her workplace, even if she doesn't want to leave. So here are sort of the test things I think that are good to look at to see if you really are in a toxic work environment. So if you feel anxious every day, if you're really afraid of making a mistake and you feel like you need to be perfect all the time and get everything right, if you're worried that people don't take you seriously enough at work, if you're not paid what you're worth, if you have panic attacks, when you think about going to work, when you get to the parking lot, when you're going up the elevator, when you're sitting in your office, if just the work environment triggers a panic attack for you, if you're afraid to speak up in meetings, if you're overlooked at meetings. And then here are some common ones that clients often tell me: if your hair starts falling out and you just feel sick when you think about going to work, and so you take more sick days than you'd really like to admit, but it's related to how anxious you are at work. So when we don't like the work that we're doing and we feel those ways, we often just leave, and it's like not difficult, right? If there's not something keeping us in the job and we feel like a job is creating a toxic work environment for us, we just leave and it's not even a problem. If somebody is feeling these toxic feelings in their workplace and they're not leaving, then it is worth solving this problem, even if it's not by moving and going to a different job. A lot of times we want to stay in a job because we love the work we're doing. We don't want to be forced out of the job by people who are having bad behavior at work, right? Or we don't really know what other options we have. We don't totally know what we would do if we left. So it doesn't really matter why you are staying, but if you're staying, it is always possible to create a healthy work environment, even if it feels toxic now. So I want to tell you a story about a client that I had before she came to me. She was working in this work environment that just felt terrible to her. She was sick all the time. She was going to doctors. They couldn't diagnose her. She was terrified at work. She actually turned out, she didn't realize it at the time, but her boss was sexually harassing her. And she didn't realize it was sexual harassment because they had had a long-standing friendship. And he was putting pressure on her to have an affair with him. And then he started taking work away from her when she said no. And she felt guilty because he was so upset that she rejected him, and she felt confused, and she would never have identified it as actually sexual harassment because she had this friendship with this guy in the past. And so, but she was feeling all these feelings. She was anxious every day. She was sick. She was having panic attacks. She had, like, one person told her that she looked like she had cancer because she was so sick all the time. And so then what she did was she moved departments. She convinced her like a higher up VP to allow her to move departments. And the thing she found, even though she was in a different environment, was that she still had the same feeling. She was still anxious every day. She was still afraid. She was terrified she'd run into the guy who had been harassing her. And so here's what was going on with her. Here's how I like to think about this. We think of a toxic work environment as like the weather, as like something that's happening outside of us. It's somebody else's behavior. But really, like we think it's created by other people. But really you can show that this is not actually true 100%, because even when one person in a work environment is having bad behavior, terrible behavior, right? Not every person in that work environment is going to have the same reaction or is going to have that toxic experience around that behavior. And so this doesn't mean that when we're experiencing anxiety or we're like having panic attacks or our hair's falling out, that it's our fault or that we are like creating the bad environment or something like that. We're usually having a reasonable response based on our own experiences. But there are many responses that are reasonable. I had a client say to me earlier today that the men she worked with are so fragile and create such a, have such temper tantrums if they don't get exactly what they want, that she's justified feeling angry all the time. And so I don't disagree with her. And I think that she can find a lot of reasons that she is justified feeling angry all the time. But the point is that the anger is not the only justifiable response, right? Okay, so there are different responses, different reactions that can be also reasonable. So I like to think about this as like, if you think about the other person's behavior as like the weather. So I live in Oregon, so it rains a lot. So I like to use a rain analogy. So it's raining outside. And each of us has an umbrella that we can use or not use. And many of us were never taught that we have an umbrella or a way to create our own environment as separate from somebody else's behavior, right? We think that our feelings caused by somebody else's behavior. behavior because we can think of reasons that our feelings are justified around somebody else's behavior. And so they're really two separate things, right? Some person has behavior, and then I like to think of it as like we have this umbrella that we can hold on to, and we can choose to use it or not. And the umbrella is our thoughts, right? So if I worry all day long that I'm stupid, and then someone else says, oh, you're stupid, then it was already inside of my umbrella, that toxic experience, right? If I worry that I don't deserve respect, and someone acts disrespectfully, then that disrespect, that feeling of disrespect, that toxicity was under my umbrella already. And it is way quicker and way more effective to clean the atmosphere under your umbrella, to clean the atmosphere in your thoughts and your perspectives than to try to change the weather. And the weather is somebody else's behavior, right? The side effect, the natural side effect, is that when you do clean the atmosphere under your umbrella, when you learn how to like hold your umbrella under the weather and clean the atmosphere under there, then you also have an impact on the external environment too. So the client that I was talking about who felt so anxious, she was in this toxic environment, and then she moved apartments, but she still experienced a toxic environment in this new department because the environment was within her thinking. It was within her, under her umbrella, right? So after we work together, now she's in this place where she is sort of taking a leadership role in this department. And now she says that she's never been so happy in 23 years of working for this employer. Can you guys still see me? Oh, okay. I don't know why. I think I froze. So she said that she's never been so happy in 23 years of working for this employer than she is now. So she was able to really shift things and clean this environment for herself so that now, really in any external environment, she's able to manage her internal environment. So on the other hand, I do a lot of speaking events and presentations. And almost every time a woman comes up to me and she says, oh, I'm so glad that you're talking about this topic. I left a job because of harassment, because of a toxic work environment. I had this woman come up to me a couple weeks ago at an event, and she said she was an accountant and she worked in a lawyer's office. And the lawyer would come up to her, like asked her out to drinks, and would come up to her and rub her shoulders. And she was so uncomfortable that she didn't confront it, and she just left. And then she ended up only working for her husband. She was only comfortable working for her husband after that because she was so afraid to take another job like this. So the other thing I want to mention is somebody reached out to me recently, and she's a stay-at-home mom. And her husband, she believes, is a narcissist, and she's really afraid of getting out of this environment. And I just want to offer that our work environments include, if you're a stay-at-home mom, your home is your work environment, right? It's not different than somebody who works in an office. So if you're afraid to leave your work environment and it's your home, if you feel like you have a toxic work environment in your home, that is worth paying attention to also. So what I want you to do now is just think back to the person who you were thinking about at the beginning, who I asked you to think about, who you love, who you think is amazing at their job, who is has great things to offer at the world, but complains about work all the time and really and you believe is in a toxic work environment. And I want you to send love to that person. And obviously don't call them out on anything, because this is all about how can we create a healthy environment both underneath our umbrella and outside of our umbrella, right? And I want you to consider sharing this video privately with that person. You can just use the share button and you can send it in a message. You don't have to tag the person or do it publicly at all. And also send them love. Send them a little note and tell them that you think that they're a great person, that they are amazing, and that they deserve to be in a healthy environment. If they have a toxic environment underneath their umbrella in their thoughts, then they haven't done anything wrong. It just means that they have a human brain, and none of us were taught how to clean that up and how to create a healthy environment in our brains. And their thinking is likely very reasonable. Like my client who said that she was justified to be angry. She was totally justified to be angry if that's what she wants to choose. It just creates a painful environment in our own space. So this is obviously what I do. I help people go from the place where they're in a toxic work environment to a place where they feel healthy, feel comfortable, and know that they can impact their work environment and make it healthy for other people also. If you want to know more about what I do, or you want to chat, or you want to tell me about your work environment, if it's a home work environment or if it's an office work environment or a warehouse or whatever it is, I work with people all over who believe that they're in toxic work environments. And if you want to clean up the space under your umbrella or help other people clean up their spaces, just send me a message and tell me what's going on with you. I would love to talk about it. And I would love to hear about the people that you want to help too. Thanks, you guys.